Hey everybody, good to have you back. And it's not week bajillion, as Adam said last week while I was getting ready for surgery. It's week 203. I assure you, I would have much rather been with you guys than waiting in a cold operating room ready for to go under the knife. So anyway, it's good to have you all back. My eyesight is very weird. I've got a hard line right through the center of my vision on my left eye, and it's still a little swollen and it's still dilated. But nonetheless, we're seeing again, and that's super encouraging. So I'm super thankful. And I'm thankful to be back with these guys. And I'm also thankful to be able to introduce you to Chris Loucy. And Chris Loucy and I met the day before I had to go in for surgery. And I found out that morning that I had to have surgery. Um, so anyway, and I'm familiar with Jay Galt. I was familiar with them, but getting to know Chris, I was like, man, this is kind of fortuitous. So talk to Adam and Jack about, hey, what do you think about bringing Chris on to talk about business credit scores and how to get you as the owner off those personal guarantees where possible so that you're building your own credit for the credit score for the business versus relying on you. And I want to have Chris, after we get kind of past some of the current events stuff, that whatever Adam and Jack want to talk about, I want Chris to tell some of his story. We're actually going to have him on the Anything But Typical podcast too, because his story is pretty cool. But I want him to tell some of his story just so that you get context as to why in the world is he doing this, because it has a very deep relevance. So anyway, Jack, Adam, so good to see you mostly. And so
Literally, yes.
yeah, literally and figuratively, but literally. Any current events? Because I've kind of not been, I've had my head down for 5 days. I had to look at the floor. So I have not watched any TV. I haven't been paying attention. Like I don't know what's going on out there. Um, other than there was an Iranian attack on Saturday. I did hear about that. So um, anyway, what do you guys want to talk about?
Well, I just wanted to maybe throw a little more detail into that and reading off of some reports in relation to that, and an interesting observation related to that, which is that it seemed like there's been wavering support, or depending on what side of the aisle you're on, as far as support for Ukraine, support for Israel. There's a lot that is mixed in that bag as far as politics and religion and everything else. But what I've seen is that a bolstered support on both sides of the aisle to call a call to action that maybe had been ignored a little bit, or resisted because of the strike. And that it talks here in this article about, well, one person said the world is on fire and history will judge us for our action or inaction. um, but I think that what we've seen over the past few days is swift bipartisan support of um, assisting with the what's going on in Israel as far as defense, but at the same time trying not to start World War III or be a part of World War III. An interesting comment that was made in some of the political roundtables on Sunday morning is that that's kind of how World War II started, which is, well, I don't want to get involved, but I can't just stand back and do nothing. And so you have to, incrementally you get pulled into this vacuum, and then before you know it, you're in the middle and you're sucked into it, kind of thing. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of countries are trying to avoid getting sucked into that, but understanding that there's certain obligations, both moral obligations, but also agreements between countries to come to each other's aid. I think it's also very clear or has been made very clear that willing to help with defense, but have little interest in going on offense with U.S. forces and weapons and everything else. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about. I'm not an expert on that, but I just sharing some observations that, again, depending on what channel you turn on, whether it's MSNBC or Fox News, same story, different viewpoints, but you wouldn't know it's the same story sometimes.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And the only thing that I had is that, the tax proposal that's been out there that passed the House, still stalled in the Senate, does not appear to be immediate plans to take it up. So you know, hopefully they do something. I think, the two primary benefits were for business owners was the roll back to 100% bonus depreciation, was going to be great, and then the ability to expense versus capitalize research and development expenses, which is a big deal, because nothing sucks worse, Gary, when you have to pay more taxes today to receive a credit in the future. Said no happy business owner ever. So, we're still waiting to see something there on that front. And then, again, just a reminder that, you know, it seemed like so long away when we started, banging the gong, 3 years ago. Eventually these Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is going to expire, but like 2025 is right around the corner, so it's coming up pretty soon. So it's just something to keep top of mind, that the low rate environment that we're currently enjoying is set to expire if nothing else happens.
And can I bring up one more thing on just thinking about on the Corporate Transparency Act? So, there was this case out there that was an appeal to, or trying to repeal the Corporate Transparency Act. Quick kind of Cliff Notes version. Any business in the U.S. that's formed in a U.S. territory, U.S. state, needs to report its underlying beneficial ownership to the federal government. And if you formed an entity after January 1st, it has to be within 90 days after the date of formation. And for all the rest of us that have companies that were in existence as of December 31st of 2023, you have until the end of this year to file that. Now, we're kind of taking a slow roll to this at Shoemaker, in that we're not contacting clients at this time to say, by the way, send us all your stuff, because there's two sides to it, as usual, which is it constitutional? Will it be overturned for everyone else? Right now, the only people who don't have to comply with that are the plaintiffs in that particular case. I think it was in Alabama. And so unless you're a part of that case, you still have to comply. And I will tell you that, I had a few entities that I formed the second week of January that we had to go ahead and file that underlying beneficial ownership information with the federal government. Now, the good news is it's easy to do once you get your ID number and everything else. The bad news is that it's, you have to pony up a photo of your driver's license or a passport or something, very personal, in order, and scan that and send it to them, make it part of the file. So more to come on that, but just keep that in the back of your mind, that we've had some people think, well, I have an entity that's set up, I'm setting up an affiliate or a subsidiary of a company, but it was formed in 2024. So don't assume that just because it is linked to a company that was previously in existence, that you have until the end of this year for that new company that was formed this year. So just be aware not to make that misstep.
Yeah, because the penalties are pretty significant, aren't they, Jack?
Yes, in 5 figures. I mean, it's, I think 10,000 per offense. And, again, are they going to come after you and really prosecute you? No, but the threat is still there. So I know people that are not complying. It's take your chances if you want to do that. I think they believe, I shouldn't say, no one at Shoemaker is doing that. But we're not ignoring it. But there are others who said, well, I'm just not gonna, it's gonna be repealed one way or another by the Supreme Court or through new legislation. And so we're not gonna bother with it and put our stuff out in the public domain for a few months before that happens. I think that's a dangerous position to take. I think you comply with it as it is currently in place and hedge your bets a little bit on ones that need to be filed by the end of the year. So
As much of a nonconformist as I am, I still conformed and I filed that sucker for my book my book royalty. So and I did go with my attorney, which is not Shoemaker. It's just because it's David T. Catch, and you guys do some work with David. But anyway, so he was happy to take my money, and I was happy to have him do it, even though I could have done it. I could have done it. He's like, dude, you could do this. I said, I don't have time. I'm getting ready for surgery. So no, deal with it. So anyway, now the main event. So Chris, Loucy, the mic is going to be yours. Guys, treat him well. Hit us up with the Q&A. I'll keep monitoring that with 1.5 eyes. and you can harass us in the chat. Thank you, Jamie. It's good to see you too. But Chris, tell us a little bit about, what Jay Galt is and what you're doing, and then go back to your story as to why this actually matters.
Definitely. First of all, thank you guys for having me and for the interest in something that's very near and dear to my heart. And Gary, certainly great to see you upright and halfway seeing us. So I'm glad to see you here. So yeah, it's Jay Galt. As some of you might have that, where do I know this name from? It is a take on who is John Galt from Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand's famous 50s book that was written. And what we do as a company is our mission's really twofold. Number one, to protect the small business owner, and number two, to help them prosper. And so that's really the core of it, of what we do. A little bit on the founding of the company, because I think it's pretty relevant, similar to my story of why we're here and what we're doing. The company was originally founded back in 2007, but the current ownership and the name as we know it, the ownership, our CEO was entrepreneur, owns 5-6 different companies, had several exits, etc. And he had, back in 2008, when we had the first financial collapse, he had 2 acquaintances, and one of them being a dear friend, commit suicide. And both of them were off of the negative effects of the economy. And one of them had to lay off 300 employees and had his company crumble. And the other one was a popular real estate investor speaker that was a nationwide well-known name. And so we went through that process of that, and fast forward to COVID. COVID happens, and we all remember March, and when our 2 weeks turned into a TBD, and he literally started, our CEO literally started having PTSD, and he was like, I never really got what PTSD was, never really understood it, probably had some pretty negative thoughts about it, to be frank, but he started saying, like, is this going to happen to me again? I'm watching all these business owners around me struggle and have to deal with things that are not their fault and not of their own making, right? And the consequences are huge. And so they ended up buying this company and rebranding it Jay Galt. And over the last 3 years, we've had explosive growth across the nation. We've already helped over 40,000 small businesses. So what do we actually do? Our core is to help businesses build a premium business credit score so that the business attached to the EIN can have access to corporate funding and everything they need for a firm financial foundation for the business. The result of that is to protect the small business owner so that they do not have to, I always call it co-signing, and whether it's literally or figuratively, using personal guarantees, using their personal credit, or using their personal finances or assets to support the business. And so we go through a system that takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months, but a predefined program to build that credit into a premium score. And then on top of that, open up that business and connect them with all of the vendors and lenders that they need to accomplish their goals, to get the funding that they need for their business with no personal guarantees. So at a high level, that's what we do. To Gary's point, how did I get involved in this? I did not go to school for this, did not spend the last 20 years of my career preparing for this directly, but indirectly, I spent the last 20 years of my career preparing for this. I've been around small business my entire life. My stepfather owned a flooring company, a retail flooring store, and I started working there in my teens and ended up in sales and ended up going on to work for a couple other companies past that. I ended up a COO of a $25 million flooring company here in the Carolinas. Led them to acquisition and then left and started my own flooring company here in Charlotte. For about 4 years, we grew that company and started with nothing and ended up doing about $1 million a month, about $12 million run rate. And we were getting ready to expand across the Southeast. We were in Charlotte, Raleigh, and Greensboro. And we went to our 2 largest national customers and said, hey, here's a proposal to save you several millions of dollars, a couple $1 million per year. And what we're going to do is we're going to import this material directly from overseas. You're buying enough of it where we can save you about 30% cost on that. And we're going to basically cut out the distributor and we'll become the middleman. We'll import it and we'll grow with you and save you money, et cetera, et cetera. What we didn't think about was what the ramifications of that might be. The distributor, being a multi-billion-dollar company, these 2 customers and the product category that was represented $250-300 million a year for them in revenue across the nation, and this obviously was going to be a disruption. So in about a 30-day period, we had our top 2 customers call us and tell us that they were instructed from their corporate headquarters they could not work with us anymore. And then this distributor, who we were still buying from, took our terms from 90 days to 30 days and demanded $150,000 before we could pick up another product. And then from there, we ended up in about 30 days with about $900,000 in accounts receivable. And 30 days after our distributor did that, they sued us. And what turned into is a downward spiral for the next 6 months. And where we were as a company was over the last 4 years, I had just reinvested everything back in the business. I didn't take a single distribution over 4 years. I just kept growing the business and trying to build a strong, healthy business, take care of my customers and build something that I'd be proud of. And what resulted was all of a sudden, not only in defense mode, but for the first time in 4 years, thinking about taking a loan out, thinking about personal guarantees, and thinking about the risk to me and my young family. Went to take a loan out, bank offered $100,000. Now I know is because it was tied to me personally and not to the company. Passed on that, and we couldn't get a loan for the business, even though we were making $100,000 in profits a month. Even after losing 40% of our business, we still were showing a profit. So fast forward, we ended up closing down the business, and probably one of the hardest days of my life, coming home, telling my wife, all that money we invested and all those promises I made about this will be worth something one day, it's all gone. And I got stuck holding the bag, which I'm very capable of, and I took that on, took responsibility for it, and that. But fast forward a year. All of a sudden, I'm in discussions with Jay Galt, and they tell me what they do, and literally brought a tear to my eye. And the common phrase that I hear now from clients and members is the same exact thing I said. Where were you 5 years ago?
Mhm.
How come you couldn't have told me about this sooner? And so that's how personally I got here. And for me, it ends up being a mission-based role that I'm playing here as a managing partner. Is to, hey, how can I help my fellow entrepreneurs, small business owners who are obviously the backbone of our economy? How can we help set them up in something that they probably haven't thought a lot about, probably haven't invested much time or energy or money into their business credit profile. How can we teach them, help them expedite that process so that they can be protected personally, and then they can have the financial foundation built so that they can achieve their goals?
Powerful stories in both the creation. I didn't realize that Jay Galt was the Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, which makes total sense with the logo and all that, which is
Yep.
really good. So for anybody listening to this, I think a lot of times there are assumptions made. Oh, well, I got good credit, I've been paying my bills, blah, 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 blah. But they don't realize that there's kind of a shadow system going on that's not tied to your personal, but it's tied to the business. And even the credit score numbers are vastly different, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct. It's really the biggest fallacy that we educate on. Number one thing is the business credit score. Unlike your FICO personal credit score, on your personal FICO credit score, we all know everything that, because we've been in the system since we were 18. There's a federal law personally that any debt you take on that's attached to your social security number, by law, the lender has to report that to the credit bureaus. So when anyone pulls your personal credit report, they're going to see a pretty complete picture of your credit profile, how much debt you have, what those payments are, and if you're paying them, etc. Thus, on the personal side, they use utilization, how much of your total credit available to you are you using, and debt to income, right? Those are the two main things they use on personal. The fallacy on the business side is that there is no federal law requiring all debt to be recorded or reported to the business credit bureaus, which are different credit bureaus with Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, Equifax Business, Credit Safe, et cetera. And so because of that, 92% of your business transactions to your vendors, your lenders, et cetera, all your credit combined, 92% never get reported. And so a credit report, generally, when we pull a credit report on a business who's been around for 10 years, 12 years, it's not bad. It has a poor score. It's not a bad report. It's an incomplete report. I commonly make the analogy that it looks like an 18-year-old who just got their first credit card. Doesn't mean they're bad with money. It just means they have no credit established. And that is the core of the challenge, because everyone, to your point, Gary, says, I've been around for 10 years. I've always paid my bills on time. I have never been late. We have all of these credit cards and fuel cards and equipment loans and whatever. We pay them all, so we should be good. And then they're shocked when there's 4 actual vendors reporting on the credit report after 15 years. And they have what equates to a middle of the road score. Business credit is on a 0 to 100 score, and 80% of the reports that I pull are in the 40 to 60 range. And so they're below average. And again, it's not because they're poor money, not paying the bills. It's because of the lack of experiences that are being reported. And so to your point, what comes a problem is throughout their business and running their business, they have been told or just assumed that I have to put a personal guarantee on everything. And what hasn't been explained to them is you have to, because you have a poor credit score on your business. So we need some reassurances. And so they essentially are asking for a cosigner. Back to the 18-year-old who just got their first credit card. If they went to buy a car, they have 2 options: get a cosigner or raise your credit score. That's really the 2 options. It's no difference than a business, right? You're either going to raise your credit score or you're going to co-sign as the owner for the business, thus opening up the exposure of all your personal assets, your home, your kids' college fund, et cetera, from there. If something could happen, and one of the things I love about entrepreneurs is we all have great optimism about our future. But one thing that COVID taught all of us is there's only so much we can control. And really there's nothing we can control, but there's only so much control we have over the future. and things could happen, like being shut down for 3 months or 6 months or whatever, that could all of a sudden make all of those assets that we have on the line really be questioned as a risk and cause a lot of liability for us. And so that's where really there's the opportunity now to work with entrepreneurs to really put a solid wall between the owner and the EIN, the business, as far as risk goes.
So anybody listen to this, feel free to hit me with questions, and I'll make sure that Chris sees them. But a question that comes to my mind, Chris, is, what does this process look like? And I was surprised at actually how affordable it is to go through that, because I figured, oh man, it's a year, it's just tens of thousands of dollars. It's not actually. So kind of hit us with some of those frequently asked questions when somebody's just learning and going, wow, okay.
Yeah, great
Take us through
questions.
that.
So what our program looks like is again, going back to the 18-year-old. We told them, hey, you got your first credit card, you want to buy a house. What do you got to do? Get some credit cards, use them, pay them off, then maybe qualify for an auto loan, get it, pay it off, use it for a while, pay it off, and build your credit up until you can get a credit score where you can walk into a bank and get a mortgage, right? That's the process we would tell them. Very similar on your business. Your business credit score, the two largest factors are the number of accounts that are reporting, the vendors that are reporting, and paying it on time, and the quantity that you're paying, or what kind of expenses are you paying, which thus is going to relate to the size of your business. And so what we do is very similar to that, and saying, let's build our credit. The challenge, like I talked about, the big fallacy here is that we can't just go get a credit card because we don't know if they report. So what we've done is we've put together a collection of over 1,300 vendors and lenders that are in our network, and there's two requirements that we require from them before they can join our network. Side note, very good network that all these vendor and lenders want to be in, because we have a ton of small businesses that fit a certain demographic, and they all have premium credit scores within a year, right? So we get people knocking our door literally daily who want access in our network, but we have two requirements. Number one, you have to report to the business credit bureaus. Number two, that's obvious. That's part of what we do. Number two is you also have to let us know what your approval criteria is for your credit. So with that information, and with these 1,300 and growing vendors and lenders in our network, we then can put together a system and work towards whatever your goals are. Might be to get a real estate loan, buy your warehouse or your office. Might be to get some equipment financing, or to get a large line of credit so you can buy more vans or work trucks so you can expand your workforce. Whatever it is, our concierge will work to obtain that goal by starting with some small token, credit accounts, and use those to boost the credit score up. And then we'll get some a little bit better credit, like a fuel card. Use that for your fleet, and get your fuel on there, pay it off. It's getting reported, and then we'll get maybe a regular credit card. And one of the common things I hear is, well, I have a Chase business card, or I have an American Express card. It's a business card. Just because it's a business card doesn't mean it's a quote unquote corporate card, right? If you have to give them your social security number in the application, and if it's showing up on your personal credit report, it's secured by you, and it's really just a branded personal credit card. They're just branding it as a business card, no different than a Costco card or whatever. And so we'll get some actual revolving credit cards that are corporate cards tied to the business EIN. Use those, and we're going to use these different tiers of credit to work the score up. And then we have some strategies that are, if needed, and if it fits into the current business model that the owner has, something as simple as, what's the largest expense that any business has? Their people, right? And so we work with a payroll provider, the only one in the nation that we've been able to find, that actually will take your payroll that you're paying every week or biweekly and report that as a successful expense that you're paying to the credit bureaus. And so now all of a sudden, instead of
Mm.
reporting $1,000 a month in successful credit that you're paying, now all of a sudden we're at $150,000 a month that you're paying because it's reporting your credit cards, your fuel cards, and your payroll. So we have strategies like that to build up your credit score and your recommended credit limits that's on your credit report, so that we can get to those, whatever that end goal is for that particular business, so that they can get that funding. One of the core things I talk to every business owner I talk to about is what happens if COVID happened again? What happens if you have a cash flow crisis? What happens if you need more money for payroll next week? And it's shocking. And I'm prime example number one of there isn't really a plan. And so what we talk with them about is, yeah, you know what ends up happening? You drain your savings account because you're not going to give up your business. You're not going to put it out of business because you ran out of cash in your business checking account. So you're going to put more money in. You're going to drain your 401k and you're going to fund it that way. What I've recommended with everyone I talk to is get a line of credit for roughly 10% of your revenue. That'll cover 3 to 6 months of expenses and get it established well ahead of time. Right. An old Chinese proverb I always quote is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? We got to start the process now so that it's ready for you in case we ever need it. And hopefully we don't need it. But if that time comes, you have that line of credit, you transfer the money into your account, you take that draw off of the credit, and your business keeps on going, and your cash stays on your side of the ledger, on your personal side, still protected. You're not, open yourself up to more exposure.
Chris, I have
Yeah,
two
that's
questions.
yeah, go for it.
One is when you're talking about paying payroll, is it because you're paying also presumably payroll tax, so you're a debtor of the federal government? It's not the fact that you're paying the payroll itself. Is that accurate? I mean, to get granular, but
Yeah, and I'm speculating, to be frank, because I'm not in it with them to look at. But yes,
sure.
this payroll provider, national payroll provider, does is look at that as a debt that you owe, right? The hours have been worked and it's owed, and so they're reporting it as a actual a debt that got paid they report monthly, so it'd be every month from there. Whether
Okay.
it's the taxes or what those debts are in particular, I'm not sure, but it is quantifying the entire payroll, which is obviously a large expense.
Yeah, because I was thinking, okay, so it's either just the payroll expense, which you're a trustee of the federal government to collect that and pay that, or it could be that your employees are technically creditors because they've provided services and haven't gotten paid for them yet. So that's interesting. So also going to ask you on the credit line, is it the mere establishment of the credit line, or do you actually have to draw down and use it and pay it back in
Yeah,
order for it to count?
great question. So the two biggest things that build a business credit score, and on business credit reports, unlike personal, they put a credit limit recommendation. So how much that business credit bureau can recommend of debt that you can withstand at any given time. That's something that doesn't happen on the personal side. So in order to get that number up, all right, starts at 0, 1,000, 2,000, generally I see, get that up to 1 million, 2 million plus. It's about the quantity of expenses that's being paid. If you're only paying $2,000 a month in expenses that's being reported, they're not going to recommend you take out $1 million loan. And so it's get that overall number up over there. Now, to your question of, do you have to use the line, et cetera? So when we start, we might just say something as simple as, Uline, which is a warehouse supply company, online warehouse supply company, right? We're going to say, hey, you know what? Get an account with them. They'll give you an account. They automate, we know you'll get approved because they've given us your approval criteria. It might be a net 15 account, et cetera. Buy $50 worth of stuff from there. They're going to send you a net 15 bill and pay it. And what our goal is to not just buy things to buy things, spend money, but transfer what you might have gone to Home Depot and picked up to Uline. Might be a little bit inconvenient because it's going to take 2 days to get there, but they're going to report that as an expense for you. And so go through 6, 7, 8 of those, right? Your office supplies or whatever, just transition those into a vendor that works within your current spending. that gets 6, 8, 10, whatever it is, vendors on reporting for $50 here and there. That will give that first boost of the credit score. And then we can hit the next level, right? A fuel card. And then same thing, let's transfer all of our fuel on over to there. And that might get us to the next level where we can get an American Express corporate card. One of the common questions I get is, well, I work with this vendor, right? I was talking to an electrician the other day. They're like, we go to this supply house and we get all of our wire there and we get all this there. We spend 20 grand a month, whatever it is. Are they going to report? No, they're most likely they're not going to report. And we're not going to be able to convince them to take that step. But we might be able to add in, or we can add in a step in between where we say, pay that bill with your Amex card, then pay that off. Now, and we know Amex corporate is reporting. So now we've upped how much, in expenses you're paying to the credit bureaus every month. And so that's kind of process that we go through to try to get as many things of what you're already doing. We're not trying to, fake everyone out here. We're not trying to lie we're taking what you're already doing. We're just trying to get into funnels that are actually reporting to the credit bureaus to give the best representation of you as a business as possible. So it doesn't matter how much you're paying, but like I said, it's all part of a stepping stone to get to that ultimate goal.
Okay. And then another point of clarification, when opening up a credit card in the name of the business, a co-signer in individual capacity is the same as a guarantor, right? So, I mean, what you're proposing is the company open it up and not there be a co-signer, because my understanding is you can't just simply remove an individual from a credit card. You have to close that account and open up a new one and go through credit checks and everything else. So I just want to make sure that that's a true statement, that that's what the proposal is, because then you're
Correct.
back in the same boat if you're co-signing, which is essentially a personal guarantee on a business line, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there is some, and this is more to your side of it, but there are some nuance in case of worst case scenario of, where you are in line with debtors, if you're a cosigner versus a guarantee, or if you've put your house up as collateral, like it's, it then jumps to the top, right? There's all kinds of nuance within it, obviously. But beyond that, yes, if you're co-signing, you can't suddenly remove that, right? Think about, co-signing a mortgage for a kid, right? You have to refinance and really literally take out a new loan with just them on it. In this case, most of the products that would be in, they're not going to even offer you that. You have to move to a different product. Even American Express, it's a different side of the company from the American Express business to American Express corporate. It's not just a flip of the switch. And so those are all things that we help along the way do to get them where they need to go with the appropriate product in place. So that they don't have. Now, personal guarantees you can remove, right? So every vendor and supplier that most people work with, you start in a credit app or an account app when you first open up your account. There's that fine print on the bottom that, we love to all just roll our eyes at and then sign it. It has a personal guarantee on it. So every account essentially that you probably have with a vendor or supplier has a personal guarantee on. Those we can send a letter to them, and we recommend our members send a letter and say, I am removing my personal guarantee. Here's my corporate credit score. We have the credit and the capability and the history with you to support that we don't no longer need my personal guarantee. So with established supplier accounts like that, we just work on moving that over to the actual company and business. One side effect of all of this that's beyond just personal risk, a business is a lot more attractive to sell when there's no financial connection to the owner, right?
Yeah.
If the company has a $500,000 line of credit supporting the business, and you're doing these big, construction jobs, and you're net 120 terms on it, and you're drawing on that line to support your working capital of the business, when an investor comes in and buys the business, they're going to look at that $500,000 credit's going to go away. So what are they going to have to do? Put $500,000 of their money in, or go establish new credit and try to get that on for them. So one of the things we talk every member as they onboard with us is, what's your exit strategy? Is that something in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? All right, your company is going to be worth more, and your company is going to be easier to sell when you're not supporting every vendor account, supplier account, credit card, vehicle financing, and open lines of credit. If you're supporting all that's going to vanish when you sell the company, and that's not going to be attractive to anybody. So it's another byproduct of making that transition to corporate credit.
So, Chris, quick question for you. when we have clients that are evaluating, hey, how much credit can I take on and stuff like that, and still in the personal guarantee mode, it's pretty easy to say, okay, generally speaking, most of the time, the path of least resistance is you're going to get some function of your tangible assets as your ability to borrow. So like,
Mhm.
you know, 50% of your AR plus 50% of your inventory or something like that is going to be your borrowing base. And that still includes a personal guarantee. So for a lot of clients, it's like, hey, they'd like more, but that actually is going to be sufficient for what they need. Do you have any kind of observations based in your work as to what, if any, limitations end up getting imposed relative to removing the personal guarantee, in the sense of like, okay, look, at some level, it's like, well, can I get more if I got a personal guarantee, or like, can I get enough?
Yep. Yep. Great question. So I'll talk with some generalities and some averages, and then we'll kind of dive deeper into specifics. So in general, corporate credit can average up to 10 times higher credit limits. The basic example I use of that is if you go and get a Best Buy card, right? You're buying a TV, you're checking out, they say, you know what, Adam, you can save 20% on your purchase today if you get a Best Buy card. So you say, great, I have an 800 credit score, apply for it, get a Best Buy card, save your 20%. You're going to get a $5,000 limit, right? They're not giving $50,000 limits for personally, no matter how good your credit score is. For a business, which can get Costco cards and Home Depot cards and Best Buy cards and all these, Apple cards, all these different ones that to support the business, they're going to get on average 10 times higher. And the reason's obvious, right? That there's a lot more available for them to spend, they can support it, et cetera. And that goes kind of across the board. And also interest rates tend to be lower. And that has to do with risk. And, we all know our high interest rates on our credit cards are to pay for the people who don't pay their credit cards, and, they have to eat that loss. There's different ratios on the corporate side for that. To get more granular, one thing I, tell everybody kind of as the end game goes, the credit score, the corporate credit score is your entry into the game to get the funding. Meaning, what I mean by that is you still have to have financials. You still have to show your positive cash flow, right? You still have to show your balance sheet and be in a strong financial position if you're asking for a $20 million real estate loan to buy your building, right? Which is one of our members did that last year. Like you still have to have all those things to support the actual metrics of can you afford this, and what's the risk tolerance for that. What the credit score does is it eliminates it automatically getting pushed over to personal guarantee because we see risk on the very first thing we look at, and so they go for the personal guarantee to offload that risk and onto you personally. As far as metrics go, it depends on the type of financing, right? There's for equipment and vehicles, right? Because those are tied to assets, those tend to be higher, versus open lines of credit and revolving credit cards, et cetera, can be determined by those. The one thing that is very relevant is that credit limit recommendation number that is put on every credit report. Like I said, 80% of the credit reports I pull have between a 40 and 60 number, but then have $0 to $10,000 as far as the amount that they're recommending be a limit. And we see members take that in 6, 8, 10, 12 months up to $750, $1 million in recommended credit limit. And that is obviously going to play into, what they're going to offer as a credit card or, open line of credit.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, couple questions that have come in. One, what's the size of business? Give us a range that you guys work with, and then if a business valuation is negatively impacted when the owner is personally guaranteeing all the business loans.
Great question. So, into the size of the business, we work with anything from startups up to 25 million or so. Not that that's a hard line, but that generally what the line on the upper side I say is once a CFO gets involved, and you get a good seasoned CFO on your staff, they're aware of these things and they're helping you work towards these things. So post 25 million, they're starting to get some more strategy involved in those things. And then we really, from startup size, it works just as fine, just as well with a startup on there. It might even be easier because it's a clean slate, right? We're registering with the credit bureaus for the first time, so we get all the information right, and it's kind of easier at that point. So really anywhere in between is who we work with. Any industry, it really is any small business owner. Kind of the ones that I see the most are what I call high capital intensive industries, right? Construction, manufacturing, transportation, that are always needing capital for accounts receivable or inventory, working capital, etc. From there. So all those would qualify from there. Second question was about the business valuation. Go on.
Before we go to that though, let's say somebody is like, let's say that they're doing 50 million, say they're doing 80 million, but they haven't established that. I mean, that size doesn't preclude you.
Nope. In fact, we're the fastest way from A to Z. And that's common. I tell people, like, look, everything that we're going to teach you and help you with is public knowledge. Like, you can Google how to build my business credit, and there's plenty out there to do it. The challenge becomes is that it's the hunt and peck and try to figure out if it worked or not. And so the time it takes might be several years to slowly get that way, right? Over 10 years, you got from 0 to 50. How long is it going to take to get from 50 to 90, right? And we're the fastest way to get from A to Z because we know where all the hazards are and we know exactly how to do it. So for someone in that situation, 100% still relevant, and would get done very quickly. And frankly, probably be fairly easy because of the size of the expenses that they're spending on every month. Once that starts hitting, that score will shoot up fairly quickly from there.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, let's go to business valuation.
On the business valuation, so there's two sides of it. One is the actual value of the business, and one is the attractiveness of the business, right? When someone comes and looks at it, do they want to buy it, right? And that goes into how much work they want to put into it, how much more money they're going to have to invest to run it for the first year, et cetera. And so we see positive returns on both sides. For the business valuation, we actually have, as part of our membership, we give all of our members who have our lifetime membership a free business valuation every year on their anniversary of becoming a member. We reach out, we get all the inputs from them, and we process a full business valuation, 27-page report, extremely strong, and that can help them watch as they grow as a business year after year after year. And 100% we see a positive effect on that. Quick kind of deep dive into how does 1 + 1 equal that. Values are number one thing anyone looks at when determining a value of business is free cash flow, right? How much cash is this business spitting out? If we can use the corporate credit to minimize and maximize our cash, minimize how much cash we're putting out, maximize our cash flow, right? Then we're going to be able to say for a year, hey, here's how much cash flow we generated, and that's going to obviously impact the valuation and the multiple, et cetera, from there. The classic example is the owner who's like, hey, I don't want to personally guarantee something. So when I go to buy that F-150 for my project manager, I'm just going to write a check for it because we have the money, we get the write-off, and I'm just paying for it. Well, that's great, but it's obviously reducing your cash flow, which is going to be multiplied out. So those are some basic, quick examples of how getting some of these things in place can help maximize cash flow, maximize distributions, thus maximizing your ROI and business valuation.
So you've talked about membership, which, you go to Costco, you pay an annual membership fee. Walk us through like the affordability and what a membership with this is and what you get.
Absolutely. So we have basically two different sizes. We have a 1-year option, which is go through 7-step process to build this up. And that starts, it's in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. And then we have a lifetime option. And the lifetime membership is $10,000. And that's a one-time $10,000 lifetime member. And the common question I get is, we're going to fix my credit in year one. Why do I need a lifetime membership? And the question is twofold. One, ongoing credit monitoring, right? Making sure that you're paying attention to it ongoing. You can see your score and get your score whenever you want to. Two, the business evaluation alone, having that every year for the next 10 years until you go to sell the business, is a great report card that is any business owner would like to have, because we all know us business owners like to speculate on what our business is worth, but it's really just us making up multiples in our head. And then number two, we have some other things built into it, like we have cash flow mapping software. These are different companies we've bought and folded into our membership that helps manage your cash flow and do projections and budgets versus actuals and all that fun stuff. So we have a lot of other nuance kind of built into this lifetime membership that really just is there to assist the business owner in running their business with some of these financial sides of the business.
That was the thing that I found to be quite encouraging. First of all, let me make sure that everybody understands we don't get a dime for this. We haven't charged a dime for any of this 203 weeks of doing this, and I don't see us changing that. We really want to serve privately held businesses and their owners, and in a meaningful way. So, but I was surprised to hear at that price point, and especially because we've done a lot on succession planning. We've done a lot, over the past 203 weeks on talking about how do you maximize the value of your business. We've had multiple series of those. So I thought, wow, I mean, 10 grand to have a yearly, here's the snapshot of, what the valuation is. Granted, if somebody's going to come in and buy your company, or they're going to give you an offer, they're going to go with, their own thing. They aren't going to take your valuation from Jay
Correct.
Galt or whomever, but it's a good benchmark. And I think that is a valuable thing. So that's just something that I found interesting. So, and I think we have answered, we answered the question on negatively impacted. So, all right, cool. I thought I had a new question that had come in, but I just hadn't cleared it out.
Gary, I'll add two more things that are kind of ancillary benefits that we don't think about. One is what I personally experienced, that most business owners I talk to experience, is the negative, I call it the business tax on your personal credit, right? When I was running my business, all of a sudden I have 5 vehicles that I've put through and are attached to me. So they're showing up on my personal credit. Well, what's that doing to my debt to income, right? My income is the paycheck I'm taking home, not all the money that we're making at the business and putting back in the business. And so they look at it, my credit score goes down because they think I'm leveraged. And then same thing with utilization. So most business owners will see 150 point reduction in their personal credit, because they're running all these credit cards and fuel cards and vehicles through the personal credit. So one of the ancillary benefits is you get your personal credit score back up by getting all this business stuff off of there. And then whether it's on the personal side or the business side, I always say, you know what 0.5% on a mortgage does in savings, right? That's the difference between you having a 780 and the 620 you have now, right? And so getting the business off there, getting your personal credit back to where it should be, that's the kind of difference they'll have you personally. On the business side, it's the same thing times 10. You save 5% on a vehicle loan because you're getting 12% rates because it's the 5th vehicle on your personal credit. Get that down locked in at 3%, 3.5%. You're going to save $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 per vehicle just in interest. And so, that's where some of the ROI on these tends to be very quick, just in some of those ancillary cost savings.
Yeah, this is good. And Randall, thank you for your questions. Thank you for also emailing us your enthusiasm about this topic. I appreciate that. So as we're rounding the base up to home plate, we got 5 minutes left. So, if you have any thoughts, any questions, and I mean, Chris should actually get like a Starbucks gift card from Shoemaker because he's got the first QR code of any guest that we've had. So I'm just saying, I like giving away Shoemaker stuff. um,
I'm good with that. I was appreciating that too before we went live, so I'm good with that. I do want to bring up one thing that Chris, you said, and kind of, um, quickly glanced over it, but because it's kind of common sense, but I see it happening more so now when we can accept contracts or do applications electronically, and you're clicking buttons and saying, I accept. So in the past, I've had more than a few occasions where someone would say, would attempt to sue my client and then sue an individual personally who signed the credit application. And many times, yes, they signed in both of those spots. There have been a minority of times where they only signed on behalf of the entity, but they didn't sign that second line that's on the same page that looks like maybe it's part of the application and you're just acknowledging something, but really what they've done is sign a personal guarantee. So I've gone back to creditors and say, okay, I see you're saying that there's a personal guarantee here. Please explain. Oh, well, it's on the form. I said, I understand that. Please show me my client's signature to being specifically personally responsible for this debt. Oh, okay, well, kind of thing. So the modern day form of that is that we go through and we click, and either through DocuSign or some permutation of that where you adopt a signature, and then you go through and you click here, you click here, you click here. And if you're not careful, it may be that you click, and the third click or the fourth click it looks like an acknowledgement, but it may be that you're signing a personal guarantee. So just be aware of, it's all boilerplate, and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to look at another piece of paper, and people just, it's human nature to just be like, okay, this must be right. Just click, click, click. So I wanted to alert people, basically give free legal guidance, and just be careful when you are going through an electronic application and clicking.
So your astute observation and flag has raised another one with Randall. So great point, Jack. Does eliminating the personal connection to the business reduce personal liability with regards to a lawsuit against the business?
In theory and practicality, yes, but in most cases, the owners of a business are going to get sued just because, even without having a personal guarantee, even without having signed anything that puts them personally liable into that. But then you have to fight your way out of it with a motion to dismiss as an individual that's not. Now, there's the other kind of category of things. It's a very highly legal term that we use. It's called doing the bonehead things. If you do something stupid in your personal capacity, even though you're wearing a t-shirt that has your company name and you're driving the company car, you're not going to get out of the liability for doing something like that. So you can create personal liability outside of signing for that by doing the bonehead things.
And to your point to add that, because I've lived this, right? If you sign, you have no shot. There's no shot of dismissal. You signed it. And so eliminating that step at least gives you a shot. You're right. You'll still get sued, but you can at least eliminate that. My wife got sued for our business because she signed something as a witness. And we got this dismissed quickly, but is like, to your point, there's no absolutes, but you at least have a shot when you're not personally signing for everything.
Yeah, this has been good, man. I learned even more, and not that I was the be all end all, because I wasn't, but this is really good, and I hope it brought some insight and help to folks out there. It's important. I mean, whatever you can do to strengthen your armor, because it's a fight out there. I mean, it is just a fight out there. But anyway, Lord willing, we'll be back here next week week bajillion, and that is also 204. So for the accountants on the call, which is Adam, it's 204. So anyway, thank you guys, and we'll be putting this up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on this afternoon, and Shoemaker has their own, so you can find that there too. Chris, thank you for taking the time to join
Thank you
us.
all.
It's really
Thank
good to
you.
see you. And thank you for your wisdom and your vulnerable sharing of your experience. So hopefully somebody else won't go through it too. So
Amen.
that's
Thank
the
you
whole
guys.
goal.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
All right,
guys.
see you guys.
Continued
guys.
healing, Gary.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate it. See y'all. Bye-bye.
Take care.